Hi, welcome to the podcast. I'm Tom Jackson, an Ohio journalist and a big Bryan Caplan fan, and I intend to have a good time asking Bryan all the questions I've always wanted to ask him. Dr. Bryan Caplan is a professor of economics at George Mason University. He is a New York Times bestselling author and the chief writer for the Substack blog Bet On It. He has a PhD in economics from Princeton University. His provocative but deeply researched books include The Myth of the Rational Voter, Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids, and The Case Against Education. More recently, he has bolstered his credentials as one of the world's leading nerds by merging comic books with economics with his two graphic nonfiction books, Open Borders, which has become newly relevant, and Build Baby Build. Professor Kaplan also has contributed to a new fusion of free market economics with professional wrestling. A new rap battle video debating immigration includes a professional wrestler named Devin Imbruglia who portrays Bryan Caplan and gives Kaplan's arguments in favor of immigration. You can find that video on YouTube. And you can follow Professor Kaplan's news at x.com. Lately, Professor Kaplan has been collecting many of his blog postings into a series of books, and we're here to talk about his useful and entertaining new collection, Self-Help is Like a Vaccine, Essays on Living Better. About the new book, Tyler Cowen posted on his Marginal Revolution blog, "This is one of the best and most correct self-help books." And Dr. Cowen wrote, "Of Bryan's recent string of books, this is the one I agree with the most." Dr. Kaplan, congratulations on impressing the finicky Tyler Cowen with your 11th book.
You're right.
What's the
He's one
re-
of my best friends in the world, and he is finicky. Very
and
hard to
he
please.
and you dedicated the book to him.
I did.
What's the reception to your book been so far?
It's, I think, the second bestseller of out of the series. I've done 6 books of essays. I was blogging from 2005 till 2022 for Econlog, and I decided I'd go and dig up the 5% best posts that I did during that time and then sort them by topic. So this is the book of self-help. A lot of it inspired by economics, because I think that economics, while it describes behavior, it also gives us ideas for how we can improve our lives.
And we'll get into that. You have your book organized into four sections: unilateral action, life hacks, Professor Homeschool, and how to Dale Carnegie. Why did you decide to divide the book into that four sections? And tell me a little bit about how you picked your postings.
And really, what I did is I went through 18 years worth of stuff, and I just went and tried to pick out the top 5 to 10%. And then once I had those hundreds, I just started sorting them under different topics. And once I thought that I had 8 different books with 8 different good topics, so this is the self help stuff, then I just looked and saw, well, how could I break it down? So the homeschooling essays, that was a very natural separate section. It's definitely self-help, but it's not relevant unless you are interested in shaping your kids' education and getting really hands-on through homeschooling. Let's see. The one on life hacks, that was basically like a grab all of just very particular things to do, like do this in this situation, do that in that situation. The unilateral action, those are the more philosophical ones on the theme that people often say nothing can be done. Can nothing be done? It seems like something could be done. It's more that other people aren't doing it. Doesn't mean you couldn't just unilaterally start doing your own thing and see what happens. And let's see. The last one,
How
what
to
was the
Dale
last one?
Carnegie.
Yeah, How to Dale Carnegie. That again was organized around the pieces that I wrote about Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. In a way, it's the book that founded the whole entire genre of self help back in the 1930s. I am someone that read that book in high school. I knew it was right, but I didn't listen. And then I spent subsequent decades reinventing the wheel and then realizing, oh, yeah, if I had just done what he said the first time, it would have been fine. So I tried to go and find pieces along the theme of just trying to be really friendly to other people and see what happens.
Um, Let's go a little bit more into the structure of the book because I want to test my one of my theories.
All
Your very
right.
first posting is called "Self-Help is Like a Vaccine," and the next one is called "Say Can't with Care."
Mm-hmm.
And my theory is it's not a coincidence you start with those because
Mm-hmm.
the first one you argue that taking self-help advice and trying to follow it can improve your
Mm-hmm.
life. And in Say Can't with Care, as the title suggests, you argue why you should say, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stop drinking." So, what do you think of my theory if there's a reason
Mm-hmm.
why you start with those two?
Yeah. I mean, so the reason why I started with the first one is I thought it was a good topic and a good title. So each of my books of essays, I pick one essay to be the title of the entire series. And that one seemed really good. Self help is like a vaccine. This whole theme that when someone doesn't want to take an effective vaccine, people don't make excuses for them normally. They just say, look, this is the thing to do. And doesn't mean, and it's no fault of the vaccine that people won't listen. Then the theme of, well, there's a lot of other advice that's like that. It's like to go and say that reduce caloric intake and increase physical activity is bad advice for people who are overweight. Like, no, it's great advice. It's like, well, people don't do it. Well, it's the fault's really in them. The advice is fine. And then, yeah, right. The follow up one, just to go and respond to people who say, well, they don't do it, therefore they can't do it. It's like that logically doesn't follow at all. Almost everything that you can do, you never do. If you just think about all of the options that you've got, just go to the grocery store. Wow, there's tens of thousands of kind of food. I can eat any of them, but life's too short. So most of them will never be tried. Doesn't mean that it wasn't within my ability to do so. And once you realize that, it's like, so what is the relationship between what you do and what you can do? And the answer is, well, whatever you do, you can do. That's sure. However, the flip it around is not so. And it's not true. It's like so. There's tons of stuff that you can do that you don't in fact do.
One of the pieces you picked for your book is my all-time favorite Bryan
Oh, good.
Caplan piece. Make your own bubble in 10
Ah.
easy steps. And you preface that piece by explaining how you live in a bubble. But
Mhm.
let's talk about my favorite for a moment. First of all, is that one of your favorite pieces?
Yeah, actually, I did in fact start a totally new from scratch self help book called "Build Your Beautiful Bubble" during COVID, and I wrote a few pages of it, and then I didn't feel like I was ready to write it. I thought I needed to back up and just read a lot more self help books and really get into my head into the genre. So that book is on my back burner. Doesn't mean that I'll never write it.
Okay. Well, it seems like you're make one of the points in make your own bubble in 10 easy steps. It seems kind of obvious, but it really can't be said too often
Mm-hmm.
that before you can make other people happy, your friends, your family, anybody who has to be around you, you have to make yourself happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like not absolutely true, but very close to true. Yeah, like any miserable person who spreads joy, it's a rare person.
Now that the make your own bubble in 10 easy steps has two of my favorite sentences in the book.
All right.
Don't try to make more friends who share your dislikes. You should build friendship on common passions, not joint contempt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and it seems to me that you follow your own advice because I follow you on X, the social media
Mm-hmm.
program formerly known as Twitter, and I cannot remember any time when you attack somebody in a nasty
Mm-hmm.
fashion or I mean, obviously you express strong opinions, but I've never seen
Mm-hmm.
you dunk on somebody. And it just seems like people on social media would behave a lot better if they would
Mm-hmm.
just say, well, how would Bryan Caplan deal with this?
Well, appreciate that. I mean, I am a big fan of this other old saying, which is that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and thinking your enemy will die.
Mhm.
Like I will honestly say, like, I have experienced way more than 100% of the anger that I ever want to experience in a lifetime If it could be zero for the rest of eternity, that would be great in my book. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to hear it. um, Honestly, like out of all the things in the world, the main thing that really upsets me is just other people being upset. It's
Hmm.
not the state of the world that bothers me. It's people being bothered about the state of the world and often trying to pressuring me to be get angry too. And it's like, look, all right, you're angry. That's bad enough, but why I don't want to have to do it too. The your observation is like, look, like the world is so packed with good and bad stuff. Like obviously most stuff is bad. You don't need me to go and complain about it. Why not instead try to find things that are worthwhile? Now, when there's a person, normally, like I only criticize someone that I respect. I didn't, I know it sounds like you're damning with faint praise, but every now and then I've told someone, look, the only reason I'm criticizing you is because I have so much respect for you. If I just held you in disdain, I wouldn't criticize you. I would just say, look, this person is not worthy of my time, nor anyone else's. There's this old saying of, well, it's not worth replying to. I have that thought quite often too, but if that's my thought, then I just don't reply. I don't go and write a piece saying this is worthy of reply. No, here's my reply, which is standard, but weird when you think about it.
I have one more question about the structure of the book. The
Mm-hmm.
very last essay is I was a teenage misanthrope, and
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not pronouncing the last word.
Misanthrope. I usually say misanthrope.
Misanthrope. Okay, and I'm going to read just a few sentences from it because I just love it so much.
Oh,
When
good.
I was a teenager, I viewed all of the following with antipathy: students not in honors classes, heavy metal fans, people who disliked classical music, stoners, athletes, cheerleaders, all but two of my teachers, car collectors, sports fans, smokers, drinkers, adults who hadn't gone to college, religious believers, parentheses, especially Christians, liberals, conservatives, moderates, people bored by philosophy, people who didn't play Dungeons and Dragons, people who played Dungeons and Dragons without staying in character, Dungeons Masters for Monty Hall campaigns. And I'm going to stop there.
Yeah.
If you want the complete Bryan Caplan teenage enemies list, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You're just going to have to
Yep.
buy the book. And it's
Yep.
at the back of the book, so you can't cheat by looking at the ebook on Amazon. You're just going to have to buy the book. But of course, the reason I'm reading that is to emphasize that that's Bryan Caplan 1.0, and it's not the same guy as the much more friendly, easygoing Bryan Caplan that we all know now. So again, I assume you put that in the back of the book
Mm-hmm.
because you want to encourage people. Look, I'm not that teenage Bryan Caplan. I changed, and you can change too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you totally got that right. I'm actually blushing because that list is so ludicrous. When I was writing, I was embarrassed too, but it was a confession. Like this was what I was like. It's just the truth. And there were some people who had like, well, why that group? Like, that's the whole point. Is like almost none of these people deserve to be treated, deserve to be held in so much disdain. That's what I was like as a teenager. I was immature. I was not thinking about the world constructively. And yeah, I learned something since then.
Um, one of the great parts about that passage is you actually have three separate statements about Dungeons and Dragons, which kind of tells us what your passion was when you were
Yes.
15 or 16 years old. Do you
Yeah. Well,
still
if you look
play?
look at the maps behind me in the video, those are maps from my high school Dungeons and Dragons game, hand drawn by me. I spent 2 to 3 hours almost every day from grades 7 through 11 working on this fantasy world.
Now, Brian, I don't think I'm going to shock anybody by mentioning you're an outspoken libertarian, but do you think your book will be useful to anyone who reads
Mm-hmm.
it, even if they don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily agree with you about immigration or foreign
Mm-hmm.
policy or the free market or some of the other things you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, you can say that I don't want to limit my market, but yeah, the book can absolutely be enjoyed by someone who disagrees with all of my political views. I'm a big fan of what people call compartmentalization. which
Mm-hmm.
just says that you can answer one question without answering all questions. Often a question is just not really related to other questions. And so the best way to proceed is just to stick to that question and not be distracted by other things. I try to do this when I'm writing academic books. So when I was writing my book in education, when I got to the question of what determines completion probability for different programs, it's like, all right, this is really a separate issue from everything else I'm talking about. And let's just go and read those exact papers on that exact topic and see what that evidence has to say. And once I've got a reasonable view of that, then slot it into the rest of the analysis. But don't sit around saying, well, how can I get an answer that's compatible with everything else I'm thinking? It's like, look, it's a separate question. Like compartmentalization is one of the best tools that we have for reaching truth. Everybody's got a problem with trying to make their answers fit with some bigger story. And that is a way to be wrong. By the way, that is actually the meaning of Emerson's line where he says, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. Often misquoted as consistency is the hobgoblin. No, a foolish consistency. And what's foolish is not admitting that something you said in the past was wrong because it happens to conflict with something that you have learned that's dead on.
You, of course, you're still writing advice. You wrote a piece called She's the One,
Mm-hmm.
and then a companion piece called He's the One
Mm-hmm.
on
That's right.
offering advice on how to find your life partner if you want to get married. Um, has anybody tried use the advice yet and gotten married yet that
Hmm.
you know about, or are you still waiting
Hmm.
to hear back?
I think I'm still waiting to hear back. I'm trying to remember. I think a couple of people have said they found it useful, but that's not quite the same as they got to the finish line using the advice. I will say that she's the one is close to the most popular thing that I ever wrote. And I'll say, like, I see almost nothing political about the piece. So it's really mostly just about you know, being friendly and taking chances and just increasing the number of chances that you take, just not worrying about rejection so much. And at the same time, just appreciating how much fear of rejection other people have and realizing I have a great opportunity by accepting the risk of rejection on taking it onto myself so that other people that I'm interested don't need to worry about it.
Um, if people enjoy your book and they want some more of your advice, I guess the best thing they can do would be to sign up for your Substack
Yep,
newsletter, which
absolutely.
is 95% free, and it
Hmm.
has
Yeah,
She's the One,
yeah.
He's the One, and a lot of other
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
suggestions.
even more like 99% free. The only thing that I've really done is I've had a few Zoom events, things like that for paid subscribers, and a few Ask Me Anythings, things like that. But other than that, also, by the way, I have another book of essays that is actually also self help. That one is You Will Not Stampede Me Essays on Nonconformism. I would all say all of that advice is also self help, but it's specifically on this theme of helping yourself by thinking independently and not doing things just because other people are doing them. So, I mean, I like the packaging better. So I think the latest one is more of just a general self help, and the nonconformism one is specifically on how to make your life better by not worrying so much about how people in an anonymous society think of you.
I would think that also Selfish Reasons to Have More
Mm-hmm.
Kids could be
Mm-hmm.
considered a self book.
Yeah.
It's certainly
Yep.
not
Yep.
entitled Unselfish Reasons to
Yep.
Have More
Yeah.
Kids.
You're totally correct. That is, in a deep sense, a self help book. It's one where I often describe it as a parenting book. But what is parenting? Parenting is self help, and then hopefully your kid does better too. Right?
All right, I think we've talked about the new book, so I'm going to sneak in a book that is very topical.
Super.
Open
Let's do it.
Borders, The Science and Ethics of Immigration, your collaboration with Zach Weinersmith, obviously
Wienersmith, Zach Wienersmith.
a very talented comic book artist,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. Do you think the book is going to get renewed attention and maybe even have a chance to become a bestseller in the light of recent political events?
Bestseller is really hard. It's extraordinarily rare for a book to become a bestseller years after its release. I think we are going to get another shot in the arm, especially because the Cato Institute has bought the rights to bring the book back into print. The original publisher let it go out of print, and then there's a reversion of rights. So I believe it's actually going to be sometime this month that the Cato edition will come out. It's going to look just like the original one. It's not a second edition. And they are just going to make it very widely available. I don't know if they're going to make the ebook free. So actually, the whole contract is it's just a one-time payment to me and Zach, and after that, it's totally up to them. So there's no further royalties. Uh, a negative person would actually say, "I hope it doesn't become a bestseller. I won't get any of it." But yeah, that's crazy. It would be fantastic if it became a bestseller, even though I get no additional money for it directly. Most obviously, because I think that what I said in the book is totally true and highly relevant to the world of today. Yes.
Well, maybe the book will become a bestseller. You'll become famous and you can raise your speaking
Mhm.
fees. So there you go.
There's that, obviously. I do have a dream of doing a second edition because there's a couple of topics that unfortunately I didn't realize that I should have included them, and now I wanted to, but so maybe if there was enough demand. So Zach has indicated that he would go and squeeze into his incredibly busy schedule since he has had another New York Times bestseller with his book Life on Mars recently, which also won a bunch of prizes. But anyway, he has said he would squeeze a additional chapter for a second edition into his schedule if the money were available to make it happen. So that would be awesome if it could.
You've written a lot of nonfiction books. Some of them are at a pretty decent length with lots of footnotes. But isn't a graphic book like Open Borders, isn't that something that everybody can read? You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to have an undergraduate degree in economics and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you could be a child, and I know kids have read my graphic nonfiction. I don't think they understand everything. Really, the goal of these books. So if you look, they are actually heavily referenced. There's a lot of notes, a lot of references, so that people that actually have a more academic mentality can go and look and say, where's he getting this stuff from? And they can check the references. And also, I give a lot of details about exactly what I'm doing for those who are curious. But yeah, at the same time, precocious children can read the books too and get something out of them. On my new graphic novel, Build Baby Build, I got a friend who says his 3-year-old just takes the book with him everywhere. I assume he's not getting much out of the content. Uh, but yeah, all of my books I try to go for a broader audience than just research specialists. But I also want research specialists to be able to say that not only is what I said accurate, but that they learned something new about their own subject. And then I just want to broaden the audience as much as possible from there. With those graphic books, for Open Borders, my 5-year-old daughter was reading it over my shoulder, and that's where like, yes, yes, I've got it.
that's really cool. Now, one of the things that you probably the one thing that you've done that changed my life the most
Hmm.
is in your bubble essay and also in a couple of other places, you recommend reading the letter to Menoetius, which
Yes.
is not very long. It takes probably about 10 minutes
Hmm.
to read, probably comparable to some of the shorter letters from St. Paul in the
Hmm.
New Testament, but it's a philosophical document kind of the outline for a self-help book written by
Yeah.
Epicurus. And when I read it, I was astonished that somebody who died more than 2,000 years ago was
Hmm.
offering such great advice.
Hmm.
And that got me interested in Epicureanism.
All right.
Now, you sometimes sound Epicurean. For example, Epicurus puts a very big emphasis on friendship, and you're
Hmm.
always talking about friendship. Do you think of yourself as an Epicurean, or would that be kind of a stretch?
It's not a stretch. I mean, I don't go around saying I'm an Epicurean. Let me convert you to Epicureanism. But Epicurus is just an amazing philosopher. Value per page of writing is sky high. I think we just have like 10 pages left from you. He wrote a lot more, but it's just been lost.
Yeah.
Most of what we know comes from Lucretius, one like a Roman follower of Epicurus, who I think is centuries later, if I remember correctly, who has his De Rerum Naturam on the nature of things, which is a poem actually. That one is a lot of cool stuff too. But yeah, like in terms of value per minute of time, that letter to Menoetius is just fantastic. It's eloquent and also like amazingly consistent with modern happiness research.
Well, that's right. I mean, there's been one book after another that has come out in the last few years. George Putnam would come to mind
Mm-hmm.
about the importance of social connection.
Mm-hmm.
And Epicurus said, well, finding somebody to eat with is more important than deciding what you're going to eat. So
Mm-hmm. I don't
it
even, did he say that? I forgot that.
yeah, yes.
That's cool because I've independently told people about, well, where should we go to eat? It's like, what's more important is who's coming to eat. It's I mean, I will say, I just absolutely love food, and I've told people if I had no calories, I'd probably eat 5 meals a day. And like sometimes like when I'm having a really good meal with friends, I'll say like, how come you're not horribly fat? You're just enjoying every bite of the food so much. And I like try to control myself for the greater good, and yet like, man, this food is good.
Well, and he also said that the quality of the food is more important than the quantity. So I guess we all have to think
Mm-hmm.
of that when we're chowing down. Now,
Yes,
you have a
yeah, like does the wisdom of this Greek know any bounds?
uh, now you have a friend who's a philosopher, Michael Humer,
Yeah, Mike,
and Humer, and one of the things that
humor. The
he
H is
wrote
not
was
silent. It's
okay.
basically pronounced like someone who's funny. Humor, like being funny. Humor,
Humer. Okay.
humor.
See, I've never met him. I've
Yeah.
just read his
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And he wrote a frequently asked questions for people who are thinking of becoming a philosopher. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
discouraging. Apparently, unless you go to one of the top schools and
Mm-hmm.
you're as brilliant as Michael Humer, you should probably do something else. But you write in the book about your profession, about being an
Mm-hmm.
economics PhD, and and why you should major in economics. Give me the elevator pitch version of why you should get a graduate degree in economics,
Mm-hmm.
even if you think you like history better or
Mm-hmm.
sociology or another
Mm-hmm.
social science.
Right. Well, just to back up, when I talk to undergraduates, I always say economics is the highest paid of all the easy majors. So that is my really quick version. Now, for graduate school, it comes down to this: the job market for economics professors is really good. It is not like other academic fields. I would say probably only computer science compares in terms of how easy it is to get an academic job. For both CS and economics, the reason is that the external market is siphoning off so much of the talent. In CS, obviously, Silicon Valley, places like that are siphoning off a lot of the best minds. And in economics, you've got finance, things like that, that are siphoning off a lot of the best minds, which means that if you have an academic personality, there isn't that much competition for the job. The next thing to know is that traditionally the econ PhD is quick. That's been getting worse. And actually, it got worse since I wrote the essay. In particular, there is a horrible new development in academic economics, which is the rise of the pre-doc. You're supposed to go and work for Raj Chetty for 2 years in between undergraduate and the PhD. Um, Often, I think for almost like half the people, it literally is working for Raj Chetty. So, like you can look into the background of that if you want. But anyway, all of that said, still, like it is relatively easy to get a job as an economics professor, tenure track job, the good kind of academic job. You do need to be able to hack some fairly difficult math, but it's not absolutely top difficulty. And a lot of the harder stuff you can sort of squeak through, actually, and they don't really require you to learn it. And then once you're an econ professor, there is just a very wide range of what you can do research in. Yeah, if you want to get into top journals, it's very restrictive, but it's totally easy to get tenure in a lot of places just going and publishing 5 things in 5 generic referee journals, which means if you want to go and do history, I say, why not brand yourself as an economic historian? If you want to do philosophy, economic philosophy. I recommend combining this with just doing some conventional stuff too to flesh out your CV. But then once you get tenure, then it's open season. Do whatever you want. And it's like, what if I never get a raise? Yeah, well, if you never get another raise, you're still going to be making more money than you probably would ever made as an academic historian or an academic philosopher. So don't even worry about it. Just seek your bliss. You can totally do it. If you're wondering, like, what is this corrupt system that lets a person just squeak by and do stuff for a few years and then mix it up and then get tenure and then do whatever they want till they're 100 years old? Yeah, it's called American academia. I have a book on it, Case Against Education. Although for the professor's eye view of it, then you should read Jason Brennan's Nice Work if you can get it, which really does give you a brutally honest exploration of what's going on in academia from the point of view of someone who wants a job. The only thing I really disagree about with his book is that he doesn't talk enough about things like about economics, where it really is just a ridiculous gravy train. He's focused more on humanities, where you are taking a giant gamble, and there's a good chance you'll never be able to get an actual paying job in your field. Economics really just is not like that. So it's more of, I cannot believe they pay me to do this. I became a professor because I did understand what the system was, or I thought I did. And then once I was actually in the system, like, I knew it was really good, but I didn't know it was this good. This is just a giant scam. and and it's just totally paid off for me in ways that are just beyond what I ever would have imagined.
Would you mind clarifying what you mean when you describe an economics PhD as an easy major?
Well, specifically, the undergraduate degree in economics is what I say. It's the highest paid of all the easy majors. And by easy major, there, I'll just say, like, you don't have to work more than 30 hours a week in order to get good grades if you're halfway decent. And for the undergraduate one, they don't even really make you learn very much math. When people object to how it's not that easy, like, it's not CS, it's not engineering. Nobody gets vitamin D deficiency studying econ as an undergraduate. So that's what I say for undergraduates. In terms of graduate school, there, like, the math expectations are well above what most human beings would be comfortable with. And yet, I would say that if you can eke out a B in high school calculus, you can squeak by in even a top econ program. Just a matter of getting in, right? And, well, how can I get in if I'm not that great at math? Like, just apply to a lot more places and then just wait for the luck of the draw. There's a lot of luck.
Some good advice. Now, let me ask about a couple other things, then we'll draw
Mhm.
to a close pretty soon.
Okay,
But
cool.
one of the things you're famous for is making public bets,
Hmm.
and so far, you've won every bet that
Yep,
I know
23 for
about.
23 for now.
Wow. So when you make a bet like that, do you simply rely on the person's honor, or do you try to
Mm.
agree on a mediator who will decide
Uh,
who won?
so the answer is, I've got two kinds of bets. One are with people that I know or who are famous, one or the other, right? And for those, then it's normally just a gentleman's agreement and trust in the person's honor, but also their concern for their own reputation. With people that are just obscure or I don't know and don't have any reputation, then I insist on prepayment with the guarantee of, if I were to go and cheat them, then they could go and badmouth me and hurt my reputation. So those are the two approaches. There's only one time that someone that I trusted just refused to admit defeat. I did not actually have the good sense in advance to specify what the conditions were, although honestly, the person that refused to pay, I think that they were so unreasonable after the fact that we could have agreed to an arbitrator and they would have just denied that person wasn't existed or whatever. So it wasn't the level of just total dishonesty or delusion.
I have a couple of fun questions
You know
before
who
we
you
wrap
are.
up.
I'm not mentioning your name.
That I won't press you for it. Um, did Bad Religion, the punk rock band, ever take up your offer for free economics lessons? Are they
Much to my
reading Milton
disappointment, no.
Friedman
Yeah,
and Hayek on the tour bus these days?
I'm really disappointed, but hope springs eternal. I am a big fan of the punk rock Bad Religion. I've seen the perform live 3 times. The offer's open. If you want free economics lessons, I will totally give them to you. I love you guys. I love your work. I think you are mistaken about a bunch of points in economics, and I would be glad to tell you why with a smile in my heart.
Did you enjoy the rap battle on immigration featuring a character named Bryan Caplan, portrayed by an actor, rapper, and professional wrestler named Devin Imbroguglia?
I loved it, of course. I was totally blown out of my mind from seeing it. I am good friends with John Papola, the producer and director, so I expected him to do a great job. I've also been friends with the scriptwriter, Glenn Whitman, for 30 years. I never knew about, well, I didn't know about them working together on it until a couple months before it came out. And the synergies and the production values are just through the roof. So thank you, John. Thank you, Glenn. Blew my mind.
Now, you've suggested replacing the Pledge of Allegiance with the Pledge of Success, pledging at getting kids every day to pledge to finish high school, work full time after graduation, and not have kids until they get married. Have any schools taken up the Pledge of Success that you know of? And is repetition and getting the kids to say it every day until it's embedded in their minds, would that be a key to using the pledge successfully?
My best bet is it wouldn't work, but I think it's totally worth a try. I mean, I would say like I think the odds it would backfire are rock bottom. So I'll say like near zero chance it would lead to worse behavior. Probably 70% chance it wouldn't matter, and then 30% chance that it would actually improve behavior, especially at the bottom. So I think zero point 0.3 times the expected value, if it works, is quite good. There is a general rule of like a lot of the failure of education is just lack of time on task. You can really see this for something like foreign language acquisition. Almost no one learns a foreign language in American school, and yet it can be done. And the way that people do it when they do it is they just put in way more effort and way more hours, also better, higher quality. But a lot of it's just sheer time on task. So, yeah, just to go and be constantly reminding people about what you need to do to avoid poverty. And that's that specific pledge is based upon actual research on the success sequence, which I think is totally intuitive and pretty much bulletproof when you think about it.
All right, now I'm going to have a final question.
All
We
right.
started out talking about Tyler Cowen,
Mm-hmm.
and the new book is dedicated to
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Cowen, and you call him your big brother.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, big brothers give advice. Is there a particularly good piece of advice that you can think of that Tyler Cowen once gave to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's one. If you've got a paper and you think maybe it should be two papers, it should be two papers. I have a bunch of extra publications because I followed that advice. He also, more generally, when I was a new professor, I managed to get a PhD without anyone really explaining to me what a research paper is supposed to be. And then he was very clear. He said, "Look, the whole point of research paper is to say something true that no human being has ever said before." It's like, yeah,
Well, I don't.
that would make a lot of sense. But no one actually told me that explicitly in graduate school. And that really did change the kind of papers that I wrote. So it's made a big difference for not just my academic work, but also my blog posts. Every blog post I have in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think any humans ever said this before. Right. And also often, and if I don't say it, probably no one ever will. You might say, well, how good could it possibly be? It's never been said and never will be said otherwise. Like, I don't know. Maybe like I'll just put it out there and see what happens.
I love the advice that if a paper, if could be two papers, then it should be
Mhm.
two papers. That's good advice for journalists too. I'll be
Right. Or
writing
specifically,
an,
if you suspect or you're wondering, right? I mean, yeah, everything could be split, but this
yeah.
is like if it's like, should it be? Yes. If you as soon as that question comes up, yes, make it two.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for
All
taking my
right.
questions. I've really enjoyed the podcast, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to trying to convince everybody to listen to it.
All
So
right. This has been totally thrilling. Thank you so much for doing it. Oh, and by the way, so remind me, you are the person that has previously set up a web page of my self-help stuff. Is that correct?
that is absolutely
All right.
correct.
Do you want to talk about that for a minute and just let people know what you've done before?
Yes, I've been reading your blog post for years, and I read about a wide variety of topics. But at some point, it dawned on me that my favorites were the ones that gave advice on self-help.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with your permission, I ask you first. I did
Mm-hmm.
a blog that has some of my favorite Bryan Caplan advice pieces. So it's Kaplan Advice blogspot.com.
Okay.
And it the new entry, of course, points everybody to the new book. But I there's a couple in there that haven't been reprinted yet in your book. So if you want a
Okay.
little bit more, people can go there and they can read it.
All
So,
right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. And it's an extreme privilege just to be able to meet people like you all over the world and to have some done something positive for other people. It's the kind of thing that keeps me gets me out of bed in the morning. So thanks a lot.
well, thank you. I've enjoyed this. Have a good day.
You too, buddy. Bye bye. All right. So let's see now. I will stop the recording